Welcome back. We will now continue with reading chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went on to the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the word of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here I am. Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the 2nd time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. And it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor. Huz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah. She bare also Tebah, and Gahem, and Thahash, and Maacah. Summarizing chapter 22. God tested Abraham and told him to go to the land of Moriah to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Abraham took Isaac and 2 male servants to the land God asked him to go to. When they got there, God revealed a specific location for Adam and Isaac to go to. So he asked the 2 male servants to stay behind while they went to the specific location. When they got there, Abraham began to build the altar. Isaac asks him, "Where's the animal for sacrifice?" or "Where's the lamb?" To which Abraham responds, "God will provide." Abraham takes Isaac and begins to tie him to the altar for sacrifice and draws back his knife to slay him. Before he can do anything, an angel calls out to Abraham and commands him to stop, tells him that there's a ram nearby for the sacrifice, and that now it is clear that Abraham will comply to whatever God asks him to do. The angel continues by telling him that God will greatly bless him because of his commitment, and that Abraham's descendants will possess the cities of their enemies, that they will be blessed because of Abraham. After this ordeal, Abraham, Isaac, and the two male servants went back home to Beersheba in King Abimelech's territory. In the same chapter, Abraham finds out about his brother Nahor and his 12 children with his wife and his concubine. Once the names of the children are listed, the chapter ends. Two things are highlighted in this chapter. Abraham's full compliance was proven with this test with Isaac. Secondly, Abraham received word on his brother Nahor and their 12 children. This illustrates the contrast of lifestyles. At this point, when Abraham is tested, him and Sarah were blessed exceedingly without employment or a skill set. His son Ishmael became an archer, and his mother, Hagar, was a servant who became a wife. They both ended up in the wilderness. At this point, Abraham has all of his needs met. He's wealthy, he has a beautiful wife, he has a positive rapport with the king of the land, he got the son that he wanted, and he even has political pull. He had 318 men to help him rescue Lot in chapter 14. So not only does he have a good reputation, but he has material wealth. With this aristocratic lifestyle, it isn't that difficult to follow God's laws. The only time that it becomes difficult to have loyalty to God is when you're tested. This truly allows the character to become visible. Abraham was tested in chapter 14, verse 23. After Lot's rescue and the ending war, Abraham had the opportunity to take the war spoils. He took none, but he made sure that the two men in his alliance or confederacy had access to whatever they wanted. Because he was already wealthy, it was not as difficult for him to refuse free, valuable objects. But the reason why this instance is notable, because of the reason why he rejected it. It mattered to him the reputation of how he got his wealth. He wanted God to be glorified, even in his reputation of how he got rich. If he took the spoils of war, even though it was acceptable to do, his wealth could be credited back to something like that, war spoils, and he wanted God to be glorified with his wealth. So it mattered to him how he got his wealth and the reputation behind it. So he refused. That's a testament to his character, his morality, his character. The second test was in chapter 16, verse 3. He made Hagar his wife and upgraded her status from servant to wife. And this ensured that the son Ishmael would be an heir to Abraham's wealth. This demonstrates Abraham's willingness to sacrifice by sharing his status and providing access to his legacy. This is a notable thing because concubines were common. His brother Nahor had a concubine, Reumah, and it was acceptable to have children by them and for the man to not establish provision the same way he would with his wife. It was acceptable. The fact that Abraham didn't do that, it says something about his character. It demonstrates that he has good character. Chapter 20, verse 10 to 13. He was caught in a lie. He misrepresented Sarah as just his sister when she's also his wife. He sacrificed his ego immediately to demonstrate He sacrificed his ego immediately, and this demonstrates character. Chapter 17, verse 27. He circumcised himself and the men in his household, and even Ishmael, his first son. This is a sacrifice of flesh, and this was before Isaac. So this is a test, because telling a man to cut the most sensitive part of his body, and not only him, every man that his descendant, his son, and every man in his household, to cut their penis. That is a huge sacrifice, and Abraham did it without an attitude. Demonstrates his full compliance. And then chapter 21, 10 through 12. He sent Ishmael and Hagar away, and his heart was grieved. And God told him that they would be okay to just go ahead and send them away. So he sacrificed his first son already. So by chapter 22, he's passed every test. He's wealthy and powerful. He's loyal to God, but demonstrate full compliance by trusting God is necessary. God needs representatives that he can trust to carry out his will and to be a good steward over the blessings that he provides, especially when the directions don't make sense. Abraham's compliance and the attitude he had pleased God. The intent was for Abraham to demonstrate what attitude he would have if commanded to give up something he really wanted. This level of commitment could not be made visible any other way. He was already tested in other areas. The second point with Nahor, the contrast with Abraham's life. Abraham has been promised to be a father of nations multiple times, but right now, in chapter 22, he only has one son, now that Ishmael is gone. He's now 100 years old, or over 100 now. So, seeing Nahor's life, this shows Abraham the difference if he were to become a father of nations before now. Nahor has 12 kids with 2 women. Neither Nahor, his wife Milcah, or his concubine Reumah are employed, but they're also not mentioned as being wealthy or powerful like Abraham. Their children did not achieve anything significant or noteworthy. Other than Kemuel in chapter 22, verse 21, he had the son Aram, and Bethuel in chapter 22, verse 23, had a daughter Rebekah. So these people had regular lives. Abraham and Sarah left Haran with Lot when Abraham was 75 and Sarah was 65. They got their wealth in Egypt by misrepresenting Sarah as just Abraham's brother. This would have been significantly more difficult with children to convince a Pharaoh that Sarah was a single woman. Abraham and Lot were who she was with. So if she was with them and she had children, and neither one of them were the father of her children, that would be strange to a Pharaoh. Lot was old enough to be seen as a man because when they came back to Bethel and Hai from Egypt, Lot had to go on his own because they had so much wealth, and the servants started to have strife with each other. So Sarah being a single woman and not having children, it helped her and Abraham have a certain lifestyle that they may not have been able to have if they were like Nahor and they had 12 children and he was a father of nations at the beginning of the story. Financial security might be achieved better when delaying child rearing. There may be a greater ability to secure opportunities when you delay that. That's what I have for chapter 22. I'm getting better at being shorter, being more concise. And I look forward to seeing you in chapter 23.